chapter starts in Philadelphia. The Sixers just introduced Sam Hinkie as their general manager.
Try to keep our end goal in mind, which is to build a championship caliber team in Philly. That won't come overnight. That's not a surprise.
We're clearly building through the draft. We're clearly trying to find star players that we can really move forward with.
The process was controversial among Sixers fans. It very much broke down into new school and old school fans. So if you are in the older generation where you go to work every day and you grew up reading the tabloids and consuming things on talk radio, and you go to work and you want to come home and watch a team that doesn't suck on your TV and be entertained that night, the process was not fun, right? It was something that you were anti because they were awful. You didn't want to watch that. This younger generation, they're very online, very into salary cap, fake trades, draft scouting, all that stuff. To them, the process was like, oh, this is obvious. This is what we should be doing, right? The whole point of the process was you need stars to win a championship. In order to get stars, the best way to do so is to tank and get the top draft pick.
The process, or for many fans and analysts, the unmentionable word. In the NBA, everything is designed to ensure that championship opportunities are evenly distributed. That's why the worst teams are granted the best draft picks, offering access to the most talented young players. It's no secret. Since the mid-80s, some franchises have intentionally piled up losses to secure top draft picks. But no one took this tactic further than Sam Hinkie. In 2012, the Philadelphia 76ers were in shambles. The glory days of Allen Iverson felt like ancient history. A full rebuild was inevitable. Enter the cerebral Sam Hinkie. The general manager embraced the tanking strategy like never before. Year after year, the Sixers delivered what could only be described as a basketball parody on the court. Over 4 seasons, the team never finished better than second to last place. But Sam Hinkie didn't care. His plan was working perfectly, and high draft picks were falling into their lap like clockwork. The result? Disappointments like Nerlens Noel, Jahlil Okafor, and the short-lived Michael Carter-Williams. Yet, there were also brighter spots, such as Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Almost cosmically though, it seemed as if basketball gods sought to punish Hinkie for his audacious strategy. Both Embiid and Simmons were plagued by injuries upon entering the NBA. The former missed his first 2 seasons entirely, while the latter sat out his entire rookie year.
View it as a mugshot and treat him the disgust it deserves because of the way he has literally thrown seasons.
Nothing has really happened the way the plan was supposed to happen.
But do me a favor. Take that trust the process lingo and go to hell with it.
Process Sixers get labeled as one of these like all-time losing teams. Sam Hinkie was in charge for less than 3 seasons. It was basically 2 full seasons of tanking. I believe that they never finished with the worst record, which is always one of their arguments that, like, you know, teams, other teams are doing worse than us and they're not even doing this on purpose. So why is there so much uproar about what we are doing? You know, worry about the teams who don't even have a plan. But the way Sam Hinkie went about it, it just turned people off for reasons fair and unfair. He got labeled as sort of this, analytics guy, didn't care about humans, no connection to the media, didn't do press conferences, but just the league, the uproar became too strong. He made a few mistakes in terms of not understanding the pressure was building. Other owners were upset about how, when the Sixers came in, ticket sales would be bad. When you are turning it on, or when you're going to a game, you are seeing the best in the world trying to win. And if you are built to lose, you are sort of upsetting that whole paradigm, right? And that becomes the big problem. And just the league was really sensitive about it, did not like it.
By 2016, Sam Hinkie had had enough. Less than 3 years into his tenure, he bowed out with a 7,000-word resignation letter. To replace him, Brian Colangelo, none other than the son of the team president. A former rival of Hinkie, Colangelo inherited a solid foundation. 2 young stars in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and a year later, yet another first overall draft pick.
we have Joel Embiid and we have Ben Simmons, who's a bit of a funky player, but back then also he was electric, he was exciting, he was great. They get this additional top pick coming in, and it's like, oh, we are ready. This is going to be it. We are ready to move into the next phase. You know, the rebuild is over. Let's get going here.
Born in 1998 to a single mother, Markelle Fultz fell in love with basketball at an early age. But in a talent-rich region of Maryland, Fultz was a total unknown when he entered high school. His coach recalls, he was small and lanky, and when he ran, it looked like his knees hurt.
One of the things that's important to remember Markelle Fultz is he was not like a child star. I always compare him to Ben Simmons, right? Who grew up in the spotlight, going to be the number one pick for a long time. Like kind of, you know, at the age of like 15, everyone knew he was going to be an high NBA pick. Markelle Fultz played JV basketball as a sophomore, right? It's all happened really fast.
It wasn't until his sophomore year that Fultz began making a name for himself. Now standing 6'3", he headlined thanks to standout performance against none other than Jason Tatum. Markelle Fultz's rise was as sudden as it was unexpected. He joined the Washington Huskies in 2016, dominating at every turn. In just 2 years, the guard had gone from complete obscurity to a national star.
Rim necessary. Boy, they clever.
Fultz tucking like a running back. Wanted to see him do more of against Yale. Wide open, Markelle Fultz from the wing.
Markelle Fultz was a 6'4" explosive guard who shot over 40% from three in his final season in college.
11%, really cold here.
Fultz over Perry. Fultz thought about it. Spins, weaves, up and through. High by Matisse Thybulle. Chris DeMarco jams it home.
College was by far the best time of my life. I mean, just being able to go there, really not have to worry about paying bills and all that, but just having fun.
That's free throw shooter Wilder to the line, and he misses both. Fultz.
He's a ridiculous athlete. He's 6'4", he's got a 6'10" reach. He shoots 41% from the three. He can change speeds, change directions.
Following a trade with Boston, Brian Colangelo secured the first overall draft pick instead of the third. For him, and most observers, the top player of this draft class was already decided.
He was the consensus number one pick by everybody, basically, except Danny Ainge and the Boston Celtics. And Danny Ainge liked Jason Tatum more as a prospect. Fultz did not have a good workout in Boston. He just did not perform well. He was uncomfortable, did not look good. And Brian Colangelo thought the Sixers thought Fultz would be a perfect guy to kind of complete the rebuild there.
Colangelo would unfairly get all the credit for all of Hinkie's good work. This is 100% Hinkie, 0% Colangelo. Colangelo deserves less than zero credit for what's happening right now.
And Brian Colangelo, he had just a job because he was Jerry Colangelo's son. Sam Hinkie had a very loud, strong following who thought that he should still be there, and he was railroaded, and that it was ridiculous that Brian Colangelo came in. And Brian Colangelo was somebody who was hyper-aware, hypersensitive to public criticism and what was being said about him. And I think this is one of the important things to remember, because I think he thought that Markelle Fultz, that would be his guy. He would put his stamp, he would be trade up, get the number one pick, get Markelle Fultz, it would be his stamp, and he'd be known as the guy who sort of completed the rebuild. Simmons is a funky player, right? The fit between Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid was always a little weird, right? You had then basically two non-shooters in the modern NBA. That's hard. And Ben Simmons was a ball handler. It's hard to fit in with other guys. And the Sixers thought Markelle Fultz would be a bridge, would be the perfect bridge of a player between Embiid and Simmons.
With the first pick in the 2017 NBA Draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Markelle Fultz from the University of Washington.
Well, they're getting a guy who's got an NBA frame already. He's got great length, and he's a three-level scorer. He can score from deep, he can score in the middle game, and he can score at the rim.
And it was unreal, really. Once I heard my name called, I mean, it was like God calling me. So, I mean, I'm just happy.
You're drafted by the 76ers, which means you join what's been known as the process. But for you personally, you often talked about trusting the process. What did that mean to you?
What it meant to me was anything you do, stick with it no matter what goes on. Even if stuff's not going your way, you still got to stick with it. And I think that's what I've been doing my whole life between high school and college. So,
Philadelphia could finally leave the years of struggle behind. Fultz, who had risen from the shadows into the spotlight in just a few short years, was poised to fulfill an American dream. Unfortunately, it took only a few moments for that dream to morph into a nightmare.
Rookie year was if you look it up, it was a disaster. Like, you could see the clips of in the gym of him shooting. It just wasn't going well. Brett Brown talking about how Markelle had made changes to his form over the offseason. There's some videos, there's some viral tweets of it where you can see where like his shot is just kind of like this, and people are like, "What is that? That doesn't look normal. What happened?" And it was just wild. It was wild to see because again, the number one pick was seemed to have forgotten how to shoot, and nobody knew what was going on. The Sixers were being coy about it, mostly I think because they were pretty behind the scenes, even unsure why that had happened.
Did you modify your shot at all?
I mean, I did a whole bunch of things that, that I'm not going to talk about.
Philadelphia returned to the playoffs in 2017, but Markelle Fultz played no role in that success. Early in the season, his shooting percentage plummeted. His shooting mechanics were visibly alarming. Known as a sharpshooter, Fultz didn't even attempt a three-pointer in 4 straight games. It was too much for the Sixers, and the guard missed almost the entire season.
He's been terrible. And if he's been terrible because his shoulder hurts, then take care of his shoulder, which is, I think, what they're going to do right now.
There are people around him who think it was a mental issue. I think there was physical, too. I think it was kind of a mix of a bunch of things. In the span of basically 3 years, he went from a JV player to the number one pick in the NBA draft. That's fast. That's a lot of life changes in a really quick time, and it can be really hard on an individual and on an individual circle. And his circle was, things got messy.
There was a lot of things going on about changing shots and all this and there, but there was an injury there. Once I realized I really couldn't do stuff to my full capacity, I was like, it really is something, so I had to find out what it was. And we did that throughout the season. It took a long time, which people really didn't understand. They thought, like, man, he's just being soft, but I mean, it was really an injury.
I seen him in college. It doesn't look like the same guy.
You look at Fultz shooting in college.
It's different.
And I did today. It's a different shot.
The curse of being drafted by the 76ers is you go right to a hospital bed.
We're talking about his body fat?
Yeah.
When is he going to play? I've never heard of that injury before.
The official term, thoracic outlet syndrome. This was the explanation for Markelle Fultz's injured shoulder. But for others, the issue couldn't be purely physical. How could a player forget how to shoot in just a few months? How did his once smooth form fall apart in one offseason? The 2018 to 2019 season was pivotal in Sixers history. Philadelphia assembled an incredible starting five with championship aspirations. The result? A heartbreaking buzzer-beater elimination by Kawhi Leonard. As for Markelle Fultz, he had completely fallen off the radar. 2 seasons in Philadelphia yielded only 36 games played, 7 points per game, and just 25% shooting from 3. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Danny Ainge had hit the jackpot. Jason Tatum had become one of the best young players in the league. Just 2 seasons after joining the NBA, the dreaded label of bust loomed over Markelle Fultz. Yes, the guard had all the makings of a draft day bust.
Do you remember when the Philadelphia 76ers picked Markelle Fultz number 1 in the draft?
Where?
Number 1 in the draft?
Right now, it appears to be the biggest bust in NBA history. I don't recall, even with Kwame Brown, Michael Olowokandi, and others, I don't recall a number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft being this bad.
This is the most bizarre thing we've ever seen from a number 1 overall pick in a draft.
I hate to be the one to say this, but, he's been a bust for them.
He couldn't shoot. So he was coming in for some, he'd be athletic off the bench, and the fans would cheer for him like he was like Rudy. It was just a weird situation, and he would go in and out. The team wasn't always informed of, he would miss time for his shoulder or whatever. He would say for his shoulder, and the team wasn't sure. And then Elton Brand, who took over from Colangelo, there was a press conference where you could see after Markelle announced that he was taking time off for thoracic outlet syndrome, I believe it's called. That's in year 2. Elton Brand, the GM there, you could tell he just lost it. He just was frustrated and broken. didn't know and knew just Markelle needed a change of scenery to thrive.
We're going to be talking about Markelle Fultz because he has just been traded to the Orlando Magic.
Philadelphia has finally decided the Markelle Fultz experiment is over for them.
I just looked at the opportunity in front of me and I thought, it was perfect for me and my family, to get a fresh start.
Is he the biggest bust as a #1 pick?
He will be if he doesn't turn this around. There's still time. There's still hope. He's only 20 years old. So there's still time for him to turn this around, and certainly the opportunity is there for him.
By 2020, the process era was over. Philadelphia had shifted its focus to competing at the top of the league and no longer had time to wait. After 2 seasons of disappointment, Markelle Fultz was traded to Orlando for spare parts. In Florida, the guard showed flashes of his old self and proved that his talent hadn't completely vanished. However, injuries and perhaps mental hurdles continued to haunt him. 7 years after entering the league, Markelle Fultz has yet to live up to the expectations of a first overall draft pick. In Philadelphia, basketball fans still debate, was the process a success?
Well, it's indisputable that there were some major whiffs, right? Like you look at the top picks, Markelle Fultz, Nerlens Noel, Jahlil Okafor, Simmons also now his career is derailed. So really we're talking about one guy, right? 1 for 5. I need 5 guys. I think 1. But they got the one guy, and that was the whole thing. And you could say it's unfair. You could say Sam Hinkie was a cop out, but the whole reason for the tanking I mentioned earlier, get as many picks as you can because you need the star. And Sam Hinkie would always say, drafting is an inexact science. I want swings at the plate because I'm going to miss a few times, but if I get enough swings at the plate, I'm going to hit. And with Joel Embiid, they certainly hit.
The Sixers process era was one of the most turbulent in NBA history. It brought triumph with Joel Embiid, but also disappointments with Ben Simmons and most notably, Markelle Fultz. It's hard to say whether Fultz is the biggest bust in history, but without a doubt, he remains the greatest mystery of the NBA draft. How did he lose his once perfect shot? Perhaps, once again, the media placed far too much pressure on the fragile shoulders of a young player. As we are writing these lines, Markelle Fultz remained unsigned by any NBA team as he deals with yet another injury. At just 26 years old, however, one can imagine that Markelle Fultz's career is far from over. The road is long, but if the worst is seemingly behind him, maybe the best is still yet to come.